WWE Payback 2023 will go down in history as the little B-tier premium live event that could, because so many people wrote off this event as something that could be missed, as simply just a glorified Raw. But I'm here to tell you folks that this was a tight, concise, fantastic premium live event that you should go back and watch if you missed it. There was very little fluff, and the fluff that was there was fluff worth fluffing. Now, there is already a full review of the show on the channel that you can go watch, but today we're going to be tier ranking every single match on the Payback 2023 card, from Hall of Fame all the way down to trash. Hey, as always, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, ring the bell for notifications. We're on our way to 100,000 subscribers. We're like 5,000 away. Come on, hook a brother up with a subscribe. All right, so here are the tiers that we're going to be using. We have Hall of Fame, great, good, meh, and trash. So I am going to be tier ranking the matches, but hell, I'll also tier rank the Grayson Waller effect because it was a big enough segment of the show that I think it's worth ranking. All right, let's start off with the match that started off the show, and that was Becky Lynch versus Trish Stratus in a steel cage match. Now, the purpose of the steel cage match was, of course, to act as a good setting for a final blow-off match, but also it was supposed to keep Zoe Stark out of the match. And I'm gonna be honest with you, like, I am at fault here. I have foot and mouth syndrome because I thought that this was gonna suck for numerous reasons, because their matches up until this point have been fairly lackluster. The story has honestly been drawn out a little too much, where I've started to lose interest in the reason that they're fighting in the first place. And I also thought that the steel cage was actually going to hinder them in terms of what they can do, especially because the previous episode of Monday Night Raw, we had just seen Zoe Stark and Becky Lynch have a phenomenal Falls Count Anywhere match that left all of us in awe with our jaws on the ground. And I just thought there's no way that a cage stipulation can allow these two women to replicate or best what they were able to do the previous week on Monday Night Raw. And let me be the first one to tell you that, folks, I am happy to admit that I was wrong, because this is in contention for the best match of the entire night. These ladies use the cage to perfection, not just using it as a weapon, but also using it as a prop for suspense, where we had numerous almost like false finishes where Trish Stratus almost fell out of the cage once but was hooked by her legs. It was a great spot, and we even had the veteran Hall of Fame Trish Stratus taking a superplex from the very top of the cage. It was a moment that I was definitely not expecting to have on my bingo card that day. I did not expect a superplex to be happening during this match. The action in the ring was also very, very good. We had numerous false finishes. We had finishers from other women in the different generations of professional wrestling. We had Victoria's Widow's Peak being used by Trish Stratus. We had Lita's Twist of Fate being used by Becky Lynch. It was such a cool story that those two were telling in the ring. My one downside of this is that the whole purpose of having the cage stipulation was to keep Zoe Starks out of the match, and she got herself involved anyway. Now, granted, I don't think that her involvement added much, and it certainly didn't take anything away from it. It was kind of just there. I really don't think that it added much to the narrative of this match. It did add to the post-match segment where Zoe Stark, I guess you could say, turned on Trish Stratus, but her involvement in the actual match itself was kind of a non-factor, which begs the question, why have her get involved in the first place? Either way, these two ladies absolutely torched down that ring. I thought that match was excellent. I think it's probably one of the best cage matches that I've personally ever seen, and you could tell that these two were out there to prove a point. They were out there to demonstrate to the world that they 100% should have been on the SummerSlam card, and it ended up being a blessing in disguise that they weren't, because they were allowed over 20 minutes to be able to give us such an fantastic opening segment on Payback. This, to me, is one of the best matches of the night. I'm putting this one in the Hall of Fame tier. Next up, we have the A-lister, The Miz versus the megastar, LA Knight, with the added twist that John Cena is going to be the special guest referee for this match. And I gotta be honest, I was a little bit concerned when John Cena was announced to be the special guest referee, because I thought that he might overpower the two men that were already in the ring, considering those two guys were telling a really, really great story. But in the grand scheme of things, I think the addition of John Cena was not just good, I think it was brilliant for a couple of reasons. One, it helped take away from the fact that we knew this match wasn't going to be great in ring by adding narrative pieces to help take away from the fact that these two weren't going to put on a 5-star Tokyo Dome classic. It reminded us that we are watching a sports entertainment bout as opposed to like, hey, hey, we're expecting a great wrestling match. So John Cena added to that. It also helped add to the stakes, because imagine LA Knight losing in front of John Cena. That would be borderline unacceptable. So now we're even more behind LA Knight. And on top of that, I have to admit, like, the final segment with John Cena giving the Cena rub to LA Knight was a really nice moment that we've been clamoring for a while. Sure, it's not a championship, it's not a Royal Rumble victory, it's not the Money in the Bank briefcase, but getting your hand raised at the end of the match by John Cena is a massive vote of confidence from the WWE's top brass and from John Cena himself. The match was fine. The spectacle was great, and we need to look at both of those things when we're grading this, because again, it wasn't a great technical bout, but the show that it was meant to be, I think, was great, and the crowd was electric for it. I'm gonna say that this was great. Up next, we have the United States Championship match between Rey Mysterio and Austin Theory. And if I'm not mistaken, I think this is the only match that is purely with SmackDown guys, which is why a lot of people were calling this just a glorified Monday Night Raw. I had a lot of hopes for this in terms of not what would happen in the ring, but more so any sort of storyline angles that could play out. And I think all of these storyline angles could still play out. I would have just loved to see maybe the planting of the seed, or maybe starting these new angles right then and there after the end of the match. So the match itself was actually quite good. Rey Mysterio looked phenomenal. I think he turned back the clock a few years because he looked loose, he looked limber, he looked great. Austin Theory's timing and strength was also in great display during this match. So both of these guys definitely performed. They definitely performed. It wasn't like a top tier match by any stretch of the imagination. Unlike the LA Knight match with The Miz, this was missing theatrics. This really just felt like a match that could happen in any just random episode of Friday Night SmackDown. Meanwhile, LA Knight and The Miz had the theatrics to help elevate the match that was going to be weak in the ring. This match pretty much entirely depended on it being good in the ring, and it was good. It was good, but it wasn't elevated by any sort of story beats that I think could have been added after the match, like perhaps Santos Escobar coming out and planting a seed that now he wants next crack at Rey Mysterio, or maybe just a full-blown heel turn. Carlito, yo, Carlito, where you at? You've been signed for months. Can you please make yourself heard? All right, Carlito, please give us a sign that you're still alive. Either way, I digress. This match was good. It was just missing those theatrics to help elevate it to the level of something like Miz versus LA Knight. Let's do the Grayson Waller effect next. And this was weird because it was the Grayson Waller effect with the special guest being Cody Rhodes, who had a special announcement. Turned out his special announcement was that he wasn't the guest. It was going to be somebody else who is now signed to Monday Night Raw. And that somebody else is a newly returned, who was only gone for 2 weeks, Jey Uso, who is now a full-time member of the Monday Night Raw roster. So Cody Rhodes' involvement in this is basically like non-existent, but it is important to note that this does bring a narrative thread to bring us back to Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns, perhaps at WrestleMania. So now we have the ability to bring Cody Rhodes back into that storyline. But really, this is to give Jay his new babyface pop, new entrance theme, which still sounds a lot like their old entrance theme. But either way, like, it was a fine segment. I don't know that it was this giant, colossal of a surprise that would get us off of our seats. I still think the presentation of Jimmy Uso is better. I think his new entrance theme is just superior to Jay's. But hey, cool. Jey Uso's back. That's great. I'll put this in whatever. It was meh. Next up, let's do the Steel City Street Fight between Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn and the Judgment Day members Finn Balor and Damian Priest for the WWE Undisputed Tag Team Championships. And I had a lot of high hopes for this match. This was, to me, what I was originally pegging as match of the night, and it didn't disappoint, folks, because this ended up being such a wonderful car crash. A lot of people are complaining online, well, this was a 5v2. Dude, it's a Judgment Day match. Everything turns into a 4v2, 5v2. What were you expecting? Of course, this was going to turn into a 5v2. But here's the thing. Even when it turns into a 4v2, 5v2, the Judgment Day always loses. So it's not as if when all of those people got involved that I lost the drama of like, oh my goodness, who's going to win? When everybody got involved, it's not as if I was immediately thinking, oh, look at this. Now the Judgment Day is is going to win. That's how I think of like Roman Reigns matches when everybody gets involved. I'm like, well, obviously Roman's win, but that's not the case with Judgment Day matches. I thought there was still a very good chance that they could lose. Either way, this match was an absolute beautiful car wreck with insane extreme spots. Definitely the highlight goes to Kevin Owens' swanton bomb on Dominic Mysterio through the table from the second story of the bleachers. We also had a really cool hockey segment with the two Canadians putting on the Pittsburgh Steelers uniform and hockey sticks and basically having a hockey fight with Dominic Mysterio while Kevin Owens is busted open, looking like John Moxley out there because his literally like that was a lot of blood. But this was just a tremendous amount of fun. It delivered. It delivered more than what I was expecting, honestly. I'm like, okay, we're gonna have some table spots, some chair spots, boom, bada bing, bada boom. Where's the gabagool? We go home. But these folks went out and basically had a little AEW style stadium stampede match, and it ended up being one of the most exciting matches that I've seen all year with such fun spots is what I can say. So many fun spots, so many close finishes, ultimately leading with Dominic Mysterio with the assist to help the Judgment Day win. I thought that the narrative of the story was fantastic. I thought the technical in-ring aspect was fantastic. I thought the spots were fantastic. And overall, I just had a tremendous amount of fun. For me, it's between this and the steel cage match as to what's the best match of the night, but I'm putting this into the Hall of Fame track bracket. Next up, we have the second women's match of the night. We have Rhea Ripley, the women's world champion, defending her championship against Raquel Rodriguez. And this was probably the most lackluster match of the night, if I'm being honest. And it's a combination of probably the crowd just wasn't into it because of just how exhausted they'd been, because all the other matches up until this point had the fans up in their feet screaming at the top of their lungs, even that Rey Mysterio Austin Theory one. So I'm not shocked that the crowd was tired up until this point. And that's how this is how you should be booking these cards. Like, imagine if this was a 9-match card. My goodness, like they would have just been too much. This is a concise 6-match card and it's still tiring the crowd. Like, crowds, like they can be fickle, like they can be fickle. And unfortunately for them, they were in what's called the dead spot, the match right before the main event, where the crowd is typically the most tired and then they usually rejuvenate for the main event. Anyways, I digress. The crowd just wasn't into this, but the match itself was what we were looking for to get out of a Rhea Ripley match, which is a match, not something that is a squash match. Up to this point, since winning the title, she's really only had 2 decent matches, one with Natalya on Monday Night Raw and one with Lyra Valkyria on NXT of all places, right? So we haven't seen Rhea Ripley truly defend this against a genuine contender, and Raquel Rodriguez gave us this. Unfortunately, it didn't steal the show. It wasn't terrible, don't get me wrong, but I just don't know if muscle mommies are able to really come together to have a good match. I feel like they both work together best when they're dealing with a smaller woman. So I don't know. I really didn't love this, but I also don't think that it's trash or anything like that. But at the end of the day, I'm happy that they got a lot of time. It made the title feel special because they got like 17 minutes, but it was a bit of a miss. So I'm going to put this into the meh category. And finally, we have the main event for the World Heavyweight Championship and Seth freaking Rollins taking on the challenger Shinsuke Nakamura. And it's going to sound like I'm going to contradict myself, so maybe just try to follow my weird wrestling fan brain, but this was good, but it was also my biggest letdown of the night because I was expecting this to have the potential to be match of the year. And something that I said in my review is that every time Nakamura seems to have a chance on the big stage, WrestleMania against AJ Styles, SummerSlam versus Jinder Mahal, and now this, he doesn't bring his A game. There's always just something missing with the pace of big Nakamura matches. And he hasn't been able to replicate the awesomeness that he was able to foster over in NXT Black and Gold when he was main eventing shows there. And unfortunately, the lackluster Nakamura performances, and when I say lackluster, I don't mean bad. I just don't mean amazing. And unfortunately, that was another case here. It also didn't help that, again, the fans didn't really pop too much for this match throughout. But I will say the narrative of the match was cohesive. It made sense. Nakamura Nakamura targeting the back, trying to put Seth Rollins out of action by targeting that damage back and preventing him from being able to walk out of the ring. Like, it was a savage Nakamura that we've been looking for, a savage Nakamura that was accentuated by his heel Yakuza anime entrance that he got, which was, by the way, A++. But the match itself just seemed like it wasn't working at the pace that fans wanted. It seemed too slow for it to be a Seth Rollins match and not hard hitting enough to be a Nakamura match. So it was kind of missing some key pieces from both strengths of both competitors. I hope that makes sense, because I know it's a little bit contradictory to say it's lackluster, but it's still good because it was fine. It was fine, but we were expecting more than fine, in my opinion. I think some people all did say that they liked this match. Don't get me wrong. If that's the case, okay, good for you. But I actually think I fall in the majority. Weirdly enough, sometimes I fall in the majority. And I think this is one of those cases where a lot of us were just kind of left wanting more. And wanting more isn't necessarily a bad thing, because it's looking like we are going to get more Nakamura versus Seth Rollins, because there was an attack once the show went off the air of Nakamura attacking Rollins that the fans in attendance got to see. So we're going to get a continuation to this, which means that we'll get to further understand the motivations of this new dastardly evil Nakamura, which that I'm very much excited for. But this match was good. That's it. Doesn't go higher than that. But hey, look at this. Not a single trash match. This was better than SummerSlam. Let me be honest. Like, this is better than SummerSlam. WWE has also shown to the world, AEW, that you don't need an 11 match card for it to be a successful premium live event. Because I know AEW's got All Out, and out of nowhere, magically, they just have like 12 matches on the show with no build. I'm not interested in that. I was far more interested in this tight, concise, bite-sized PLE that still went for 3.5 hours with just 6 matches. This was a great PLE. Overall, this gets a thumbs up. I'm done. Get out of here.